This episode of Blacktop Banter is brought to you by Crafco, the world's leading manufacturer of packaged pavement preservation materials and equipment for the asphalt industry. Learn more at crafco.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Blacktop Banter. I know I always talk about the weather when we jump back in here. It's rainy out, it's chilly. We just finished up our last day of seal coating here in the, well, we call it the Northwoods, but really we're in the middle of cornfields and whatnot around here. But what that has allowed for is more time for guests and guests of certain topics and things that I've really been interested in as I've been scrolling and feeding through different social media feeds. And our guest today, which I hope I get the name right, is Vince Hafeli. I've seen him quite a bit on LinkedIn because of our mutual connections and whatnot. And the topic that I see him speak about, I think, and you guys know, is one of the most important topics to me here at Blacktop Banner as well. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of give you a rundown real quick of Vince's credentials. Vince is president at Ajax Paving Industries. I've seen him speak at TEDx events online, and he's also on board of directors at the National Asphalt Paving Association, or NAPA, as we've all come to find out, and is a great advocate for mental health, which we've come to talk about often here at Blacktop Banter, as we've come to realize once we start talking about it, our friends and peers are dealing with these same issues too as well. So Vince, I'm going to let you kind of introduce yourself and how you landed where you are now in your career and how it kind of got started in the paving side first.
Okay. I started in the industry in 1985. I started working for materials engineering firms as actually a laboratory technician. $4.50 an hour, 2 hours a day, $45 a week. That was my entry point. Later became a field engineering technician, worked for the Florida Department of Transportation for a couple of years as a geotechnical project manager and assistant project manager. Managed DOT contracts for engineering firms for about 8 years. And eventually landed working for Ajax Paving here in Florida in October of 2002. I came in to be their quality control manager. That's when the Florida DOT was first going to contractor testing for pay.
Oh, okay.
About 14 months later, took over the general manager of Ajax over their 5 asphalt plants at the time. We now have 8. In 2007, which eventually became the best year of my life professionally and the worst year of my life personally.
Okay.
We'll talk more about that. I took over as the vice president of the company, and in I guess March or April of 2019, I took over as the president of Ajax. Wow.
Yeah, what a wild climb. You know, one thing I notice, so we vacation in Florida fairly often, and I always notice that there's shells in some of the asphalt and shells in some of the concrete and stuff there with the aggregates and whatnot, and it always kind of piques my interest, right? Because where we are here, we mine limestone. Everything's made of limestone and granite and whatnot, but there's always a mix there in Florida. They do things a little different sometimes, I've come to find out. One thing that, you know, really struck me and that we focus on is the weight, right, of our industry. Especially, you know, I just spoke about how our season ended here. We have to cram 12 months of work into 6 or 7 months of work here in the north. Sometimes a little bit longer you get. But what that means is long hours, long days, which means less time on the personal side of things, which makes a strain and strenuous time all around for whether you're working in the industry or you own the business or anything like that. And, you know, as I mentioned in your introduction, mental health advocate and TEDx speaker, right, on that same thing. Why the focus on that? Why focus, hey, mental health is something that I want to be an advocate for and speak about?
Well, in 2007, I tried taking my life. So how did I get to 2007?
Yeah.
You know, I'm 61, going on 62 years old. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. and more so even for that generation than nowadays. Be tough, be strong, be macho. Don't tell anyone your struggles.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, I grew up in the southern part of Illinois,
Okay.
and I don't know, probably 70 miles north of Anna Jonesboro.
Okay.
Anna Jonesboro is where the mental hospital was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where my dad told me they used to take people that were crazy. That's where they took people that were weak. That's where they took people that had mental struggles. So, in 1989, in May, I learned that my brother, which was 9 years older than me, and at the time he would have been 36, um, turned 37 in June, was terminally ill.
Mm.
Um, in July, my father passed.
Mm.
In November and December, my wife and I lost twin sons. On July 31, 1993, that's my niece's. It was her fifth birthday. That was my brother's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
That was the day my brother passed.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned at that time my mother had a incurable form of cancer, and she was gone in 95, I believe it was. Um, so, I did what my dad told me to do. I was
Yep.
tough. I didn't talk about it to anyone. I didn't talk to what was my wife at the time about it. I mean, after all, she had carried the twins. She had given birth to them, so she had her own unique set of struggles, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel like it was fair for me to unload my burdens on her. Um, I became a pretty selfish individual at
Sure.
that time. When my mother was struggling, I would leave my wife to care for her, and I would take my son and we would go to the ball fields. And that was terrible of me. I should have never done that, but hey, I did it and I own it.
Yeah.
So, I, I carried that with me for many years. And in 2007, like I said, the best year of my life. Um, it was the best year because, hey, I became the vice president of Ajax Paving.
Mm-hmm.
We had picked up the largest uh, contract the state of Florida DOT had ever let at the
Mm.
time. It came at an opportune time when the economy was going through a downturn, so it carried us through all those bad times. Um, yeah, while all that was going on, personally, I felt like a failure. I
Mm.
had all this luggage still from 89 and 93 and 95 that I had never shared with anyone. And marriage is struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my career had taken precedent over everything else. And I came home one night after a great day at work. We sat and had dinner, my wife and daughter and son. And, we talked and the kids went to their room. And that night, something happened. And I think it had to do with the dishwasher. I did, I didn't load it right again, or at least that's what I heard.
Yep.
And I snapped. I had all this pain inside of me. I had all this agony. I had all these reasons why it would be great for me to take my life and how everyone else would be better off if I did that.
Yep.
I felt like a warrior that was going to fall on a sword for the good of everyone else. So I left the house and I was uh, driving out here behind the asphalt plant behind our office right now, where I'm
Wow.
sitting. And that was where I was going to do it. I had the means with me and I was ready to go. And I received a phone call that said, "We know where you're going. We know what you're going to do, and your son is on your way." My son at the time would have been about 18.
Wow.
Um, And I wasn't going to let my son find me like that. So I did what my dad had told me to do, right? I laughed, I joked, and I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm out for a ride. I'll be home in a few minutes." Um, I went home, went into the house, took a shower, went to bed, and got up the next day and went to work just like any other day. Um,
Man. Man.
But the next day was different. When I got to work, I sat down at my desk and I had 4 letters that I pulled out and read, and these were my goodbye letter to some of my most valuable employees.
Hmm.
I was thanking them for making me the success that I was, because again, I went from $4.50 an hour, $45 a week. I'm now the vice president of the company,
You're right.
and but more importantly, it was my letter to them. I wanted them to know that my deciding to leave was no reflection upon anything they had done or not done. I didn't want them to have to live thinking, hey, what could have I done? What should have I done?
Mm.
And now that I look back at that, those letters maybe would have helped, but it still would have been completely unfair what I would have put them through, because no words could have made them not feel some type of anguish or guilt.
Correct.
Even
Yeah.
even if it was short term, maybe some would have gotten over it with time. But it was selfish of me, and the phone call is what stopped it that night. Otherwise, without that one phone call, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
So, so take me to that spot, right? You, like you said, you do what your dad told you, right? And just be like, well, come, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Go back home. But the next day, like you said, something's different. It was still on your brain, still there. And these letters get written, right? To get put in the desk. Um, you know, what we have these things that we kind of spoke about, you and I, where there's a lot on the plate, but then there's a lot personal as well on the personal side, things that build up, like you were speaking about, and then the weight of the burden of responsibility too, right, as husband, father, and everything as well. One thing I notice when you speak about that and you tell your story is the self-reflection, right, that you've done about the times leading up to all that stuff. A lot of people don't do that. I don't think that have issues in the current, right? It's a practice that I've done quite a bit as well. And same thing. I'm married, 2 children, and we've had our fair share of struggles too as well, which has been talked about on the podcast as well with some of my friends and whatnot. And I look back and I say the same thing. Like early on, when we had children, I didn't realize how much of a disruptor it would be to my business side of my life. And I would just jet. I would be gone. I'd be like, oh, here, you're the mom. You're the housekeeper. You're going to take care of them. I'm going to go quote jobs, put jobs together, work on the equipment, and get back. And now reflecting back, I look at the same thing, and that wasn't fair either, right? I mean, it's just work. We can do that and do whatever. And the self-reflection, I think, is what is a separator. What specifically do you think it is about the construction industry in general that does it? Is it the work? Is it the deadlines? Is it the intensity? Is it the fact that we carry a lot of responsibility to get projects completed and done on time? What do you think is the common denominator in the construction side that causes, and you can lead into some of the statistics if you would, because I don't think people realize the numbers compared to some of the numbers of what, well, you lead into it, I think, is best.
Well, maybe we should hit the numbers first so they
Mm.
understand why we're even talking today. Uh, Construction as an industry has the second highest suicide rate of all industries in the United States. And if you combine mining and extraction with construction, we're actually the highest industry sector
Mm.
in the U.S. Uh, the latest national average numbers is like 14.5 people per 100,000 will take their life by suicide.
Mm.
In construction, that number is about 45 per 100,000, and if you put mining and extraction with it, it's up around 54. If you're an iron worker in construction, that number is actually like 70.
Wow, really?
If you're an equipment operator, it's up around 60. So it's only blue collar guys, right? Yet if you're a construction manager, project manager type number, it's 45. You're right at the average.
Mm.
In all construction trades nationally in the U.S., we lose 2 to 3 workers a day on the job. They may be hit by a car, work zone intrusion, trench collapse, fall from height, electrocuted, 2 to 3. Yet in the same industry, we lose about 10 to 15 a day to suicide.
Wow.
We lose a construction worker about every 2 hours to suicide in our industry. So why? I mean, one of the key indicators is financial stress.
Mm.
Fluctuation in work ties into that. You all just ended your season there. Some people are probably more than happy that it ended. They'll draw unemployment and go ice fishing and
That's right.
deer hunting or whatever they want to do. And other people will really struggle through the winter due to isolation, due to the loss of income that they've had living on unemployment. Down south, even though we work year round here in Florida, we go through the wet season, June to November, where guys are getting 50 hours, 50 hours, 60 hours, 25 hours, 30
Yeah.
hours. Unfortunately, they learn to live well on the 50 to 55 hours, and when the 25 come, it really impacts them emotionally, financially. It's a low bid system.
Mm-hmm.
So get work as cheap as you can and try to make a profit. Don't hope you don't have any errors or mistakes or bad quality or do-overs. So there's just a lot of pressure financially to both personally and as an organization. So with the financial pressure on the organization, now they're pushing even harder on the employees.
Yeah.
We can't have do-overs, all the things I just said. The job demanding is another piece of it, and that ties into the financial stress. And then there's a lot of factors outside of work that
Yeah.
just tie in to what's going on at work. I mean, you alluded to some earlier. You've got kids down here. We work days and then we go to nights for a few weeks, and then we're back to days. So you get your sleep cycle gets off. I've got friends in Iowa that own companies, and they have some remote asphalt plants where they move around Iowa, so they may be gone for weeks or maybe even months at a time, so they don't have their family support anymore. So some of them may work, some of them may go to the bar, some of them go to the hotel, and they repeat the cycle.
Yep.
It's just isolation. So those are
It's a collection.
those
Yeah.
are the documented reasons. But I'm finishing up a doctoral program at the University of South Florida where I researched suicide in the construction industry. In fact, I just defended my research on August 18th, and my research told me something, and I actually read a document just before we got on here. And they kind of said the same thing I said, so it felt good that somebody else kind of agreed that
Yeah.
to me, the real problem is that one, most people don't know it's an issue, and since they don't know it's an issue, they don't do anything about it.
Correct.
I did qualitative research, a bunch of qualitative interviews of industry leaders from caulking contractors, electrical contractors, highway builders, underground contractors, so a gamut of people. And the first round of interviews I went through, when I would ask them about the topic, they would ask me, "Why are you even talking about this? It's not an issue in our industry."
Yeah.
I know we've lost, an employee or two, or I've lost friends, but it's not really an issue, really, is it? I just thought it was me
Right.
and us. And then when I got into some companies that I interviewed that had actually begun addressing the topic of mental health, and I would ask them why, the majority of them said, "Well, we lost someone to suicide, or we lost multiple people to suicide." I mean, one company out of Pennsylvania I interviewed, 50 employees, had lost 7 people to suicide.
Man.
Um,
It's wild.
yeah, it's staggering numbers. I mean, I have got a journal that I built while doing this research that is name after name after name. So why don't people know about it?
Asphalt maintenance contractors. Winter's just around the corner, and we all know the harmful effects that colder months have on pavement. Here at Wiscoat, we've tried a lot of products. We keep coming back to Craftco because of their crack and joint sealers are the best in the industry. No matter the climate that you're located in, Craftco has products that will fit your needs. Find the full product lineup at craftco.com. That's CRAFCO.com. Have you seen the smoothness and compaction that Dynapack's seismic technology has recently brought to the asphalt industry? It's incredible. And Dynapack's CC900G roller may just be the best roller on the market for driveway and parking lot paving contractors. It's even better than the little yellow one that you're used to seeing. But don't take my word for it. Give the CC900G a test run yourself by visiting Dynapack.com and finding a retailer near you.
Say goodbye to potholes and roadway damage without the need for large crews, heavy equipment, or toxic chemicals. Aquafalt is the only permanent repair material for asphalt and concrete that uses water. And installation is simple. Just pour, add water, and tamp. It's that easy. An Aquafalt repair can be opened to traffic immediately and fully sealed within 24 hours. Plus, the product is backed by a 3-year warranty and is made in the USA. Visit aquafalt.com. That's AQUAPHALT.com to learn more.
I'm incredibly proud of the Blacktop Banner Edition seal coating unit produced in partnership with KM International and available now in both the 550 and 700 gallon versions. Custom built on the same frame as their bulletproof hot boxes, I work closely with KM to design what I believe is the best seal coating unit on the market. A unit designed by a contractor for contractors. See the entire walkthrough of the unit on Blacktop Banner's YouTube channel or visit kminternational.com to learn more and place your order. Since its inception, Dubuque Asphalt Maintenance has branded our trucks with the 1-800-BLACKTOP number from the 800 Pavement Network and consistently seen increases in leads and jobs completed. I know the 800 Pavement Network can do the same for your business. Visit 1-800-PAVEMENT.com and get set up with your custom phone number today.
In 2016, we lost an employee on the job site. And actually, well, we'll talk about him. And when we did, within minutes, the Florida Highway Patrol was there.
Yep.
Within hours, our insurance carrier came to the site.
Yep.
And within a day, OSHA was at the site.
Yep.
John's wife was brought to the site immediately after it happened. So there's a lot of action. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot going on. We have to answer to OSHA. We have to answer to our insurance carrier. We have to answer to the Highway Patrol. We have to help John's wife, Ricky, get through everything that she's going through. The year before, we lost Mark to suicide. Mark was the office comedian here in Venice. I was the last one to see Mark the evening when he took his life. And when Mark passed, we waited for the funeral announcement. We all went to the funeral. We sat through the funeral, and after the funeral was over, we all went to a little local brewery. Some people had a toast in his honor, some didn't. We all ate lunch. We all went back to work. And it was done with. It was over.
Yeah.
Yet John's is going on for months and months. It happened in the workplace. Mark's didn't. Mark happened at his home in St. Petersburg, Florida. So it didn't make the newspaper like John that got killed on the job site did. So it's not out there. I tell people over in the Maryland area, if you read anything about it last spring, there was a tragic accident. There was a work zone intrusion. I believe it was 6 people that were killed on, I believe it's 695 over there.
Wow.
A car came behind the barrier wall, killed 6 workers. Actually, a father and son were on the same crew that it killed.
Wow.
And while that's all tragic and terrible, and I'm in no way trying to deminimize it in any way because it was terrible, that same day, 10 to 15 workers died by suicide. Nobody even knows about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just not out there where people see about it or know about it, because typically it doesn't happen in the workplace. It does happen in the workplace. I mean, people have been known to leap from high rises. People have done things, but typically it's an away from the work event. However, the event evolves around some of the things we talked about earlier, the financial stresses and pressure that go with it.
Yeah, there's a lot that led up to that point too, right? I mean, people have lives growing up where there could have been trauma or led to this and led to that, and it ends up stacking up. One thing I think that you have done a good job of is like if you like just have the conversation or make the company aware or whatever in one moment, you find that it's something that probably a lot of people are wishing that there would be talk about, but still kind of have that old thing where you don't tell anybody, you kind of keep it to yourself and do that type of thing. But once it's brought out into the open, uh, I think a lot of people become maybe surprised or maybe relieved that um, this is a conversation on something that should be happening at the workplace, right? Because that's what we all do. We spend most of the time with the people that we work with, for sure.
Well, here, I'll take you on the journey of what we did at Ajax, and that will just reinforce everything you just said. So from 2007 until 2021, the only people that knew about that night in my life when I was going to end it was my son, um, and my what became ex-wife in 2008. Three of us knew. I never told anyone about that night until July of 2021, July 16th. We have a weekly meeting here every week, and I was in the room with 16 of our key leaders, plant leaders, trucking leaders. We all have a weekly meeting, and I told them that day on January 3rd of 22 we were going to begin addressing mental health and suicide at Ajax. While we had a great culture, we were even going to elevate it a little more for the people. And for whatever that reason, that same day, I decided to tell those 16 people about that night from 2007. I hadn't planned to, I had no reason to. It just suddenly felt right. So I did. I even told two of the people that were in the room that day, two of those four letters were for you. There was no conversation that day. There was no communication. There was only me talking. I finished, still no conversation. I said, that's all I got for you. They left the room and we all went about our business. No ill feelings or anything against or towards any of them, because I get it. It had taken me 14 years to get to that point.
Yeah.
So how could I suddenly expect them to want to talk about it after minutes? October of that same year, 21, I'm sitting in the backyard with my wife, Stacy, and Stacy at the time had been married 13 years. And I told Stacy, I'm going to tell you a story that I've never told you, and I probably should have told you before I told 16 people at work. But
Sure.
kind of how it played out in the timing, and I did. And when I finished, she said, how do you feel? And I said, I feel like I can finally breathe and feel like I've just lifted this weight off of my shoulders since I've talked about it. So on January 3rd, I got up in front of over 400 people at work and told them, hey, we're going to begin doing this, and this is where we're going to go. And here's what came out of that day. I gave that talk at probably 8:30 in the morning, and by 6 that evening, I got an email from a superintendent. He said, I've had this equipment operator on the job, and I felt like for months that there'd been something off, something wrong, but I didn't know, could I talk to him? Should I talk to him? How would I talk to him? And he said, when we left today on our drive back to Tampa, we talked about it, and he does have some struggles. He has some things going on.
Yeah.
And he said he's going to go get some help. He's going to use some of the resources that you laid out today. And he did. And in July at our mid-year meeting, he came to me and he said, what you did saved both my marriage and my career. We created some toolbox talks that year that we took out in September. September is Suicide Awareness Month in the U.S., and the first week of September is in construction. And the first crew that we did the toolbox talk with, probably 40 or 50 men there, they wanted to tell me about an alcohol intervention they'd done 2 weeks earlier. And these guys were proud of this. You can't believe how, I mean, they were
Yeah.
glowing. They were excited. The next crew we went to, a new gentleman on the crew, the foreman, wanted to tell us about his father that had taken his life 10 years earlier and how he does an annual walk every year with a picture of his dad on his back, to try to let other people know the pain and suffering. The third crew that we went to that day, a gentleman wanted to show us his wrist where he had tried to take his life.
Wow.
I learned that the gentleman that sat one door away from me lost his father to suicide. I never knew that. I learned that the gentleman one door to my left had lost a couple of uncles to suicide and several military friends to suicide. I learned the lady at the end of the hall had once stopped her mother and had also lost several family members to suicide. And I tell people all those stories were always there, all that pain was always there.
Yep.
We just never knew it was there because we had never told anyone that it was okay to talk about it.
Yeah.
And once we created the culture to where people could talk about it, I get an email, it was probably in March or April of this year on a Saturday. I'm sitting at my desk at the house working, and it was a gentleman. He said, I need the helpline number. I assumed what number he was talking about, but I didn't want to just assume it.
Yeah.
So I emailed him back and said, what number would that be? And he said, I need the suicide helpline number. So now I pick up the phone and call him. And I gave him, there's a new national number, 988, that came in effect July 6th of 22. I gave him that number. I hooked him up with our HR lady that had, some employee assistant program that he could use. That was Saturday. Sunday, I got with him again to see how he was doing. He was still struggling. Monday, I talked to him again, and Tuesday, I talked to him again. He wasn't in a good place. But he was doing better. So I thought, well, I'll give him Wednesday, let him breathe for a day. And when I called him on Thursday, I thought he'd won the lottery.
Get out.
The difference
Really?
between Saturday and Thursday was he had talked to a counselor twice before Thursday that we hooked him up with.
Yep.
He was going through a failing marriage, if that sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I was. And his wife and he had agreed they were going to go seek some counseling to see if they could salvage their marriage.
Yeah.
So I called him on July 4th, Independence Day, and said, hey, it's been a while. How you doing? And he said, hey, things are a lot better. Things aren't perfect, but things are going in the right direction. That would have never happened before. That had happened because we said, hey, we're going to talk about this here. There's going to be no repercussions. I mean, in fact, when I talked to him that Saturday, I asked him, hey, do you need some time away? Don't worry about your pay. Don't worry about your job. I will pay you if you need to stay away for 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever that is. Don't worry about it. Your job will be here. Because if he would have had to have quit, or if he would have walked off the job, it would have cost me more to find his replacement.
Oh,
if
for
you want to
sure.
look at it in selfish business terms. But as a humanitarian, the right thing to do was just tell him that we're here for you. We will help you. We'll support you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take care of your bills while you work through this. We can't do it forever, but we'll
Right.
help you. And he said, no, I can't do that. I got to keep my mind busy. I need to work. But the offer was there for him, and it was a sincere offer. It wasn't just
Yeah.
a token offer. So those are the things that came out of it when we talked about it. We eventually went on in that spring of 22, and I said, hey, why don't we start a little mental health team?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want the team to be named anything mental health-wise because of all this stigma that goes with it.
Correct.
So I said, hey, why don't we have Ajax Warriors?
Cool.
The Warriors are fighting on your behalf.
Yep.
So we did that. It was myself, it was our credit manager and our safety director. And then soon the gentleman next door to me that, I told you he'd lost his father, he said, hey, I want to be on the team. And then somebody else
Wow.
wanted to be on the team. And at that point, I said, you know what? The gentleman that lost his father, Duncan,
Yeah.
I said, Duncan, I want you to take this over
Wow.
because I want this to exist when I leave. I don't want it to be mine, and then the day I leave, it falls off the radar, falls off the map.
Yeah.
So Duncan took it over, and we went from 5 members to now we're at like 50 members.
Wow, man.
We went to 30 employees that wanted to be trained how to be mental health first aid responders. So 30 of us went through training on how to do that. Then Duncan now is implementing a program to where everyone from the foreman up in the company is going to go through and to work here. It's going to be required that you go through Vital Cog. It's 2-hour industry specific towards construction mental health training. So the employees are going to go through that. The last class we recently had on to get some training, we had a waiting list of people. We couldn't let everyone into the class. So the trainer said, I can do 30, and we had more than that waiting.
Wow.
So, I tell people that I always thought that when I would talk about my struggles and the things I went through, that I would be perceived as weak. I would be perceived as being off. And I get people all the time that ask me, what are signs? What is it you can look for? I didn't show any signs.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people say that by trying to say that there are particular signs that you could look for, that you are creating a stigma around what mental health is and what it looks like. Some people say, you shouldn't say that someone that may be struggling exhibits this.
Yeah.
Because some people that are going through depression show great signs of happiness, while others show great signs of sadness.
Yeah.
Nobody would have ever looked at me or expected, because of my success and where they viewed me at and the sign that I showed, that would have thought I was ever there that night. So if you don't want people to know, you're going to mask it.
Yeah.
But while they say you shouldn't look for warning signs, and while I will typically agree with that, you're going to see sometimes behavior that acts different. We have these paving crews, 10 to 15 guys, depending on what type of work we're doing. And hey, if I show up every day and I'm laughing and we eat lunch and breakfast together and we shake hands or give each other a hug before we go home at the end of the day, and suddenly I'm not doing that anymore, well, something's going on, right?
Yeah.
It isn't going to hurt you to ask me. God, you used to give me a hug every day before you went home.
Yeah.
And you don't do that. Are you mad at me, or is something going on at home? I don't think there's anything wrong with asking those questions.
No, I mean,
because it's just being a good friend.
You see, if you were on that same crew, right, and you seen somebody coughing every day, coughing, you would be like, hey, are you all right, man? Same thing if they were limping all the time. Hey, are you all right, man? So there's this thing between physical health and mental health where people are like, well, you shouldn't. But actually, they're my friend. I probably should. Like, if there's something you notice, you would say it, whether it was physical, right? So mental as well. Why not? Why not say something?
When I was doing the research, there was a couple of questions I asked, and one of them was, if I say the word mental health to you, what comes to mind? And here's what most of the executives would say. The first thing they would say was silence.
Oh, really?
They didn't know what to say. Well, you threw me for a loop there.
Yeah, they want to make sure they don't make the wrong
step. Yeah, but then they would say, okay, mental health is anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. Those are all mental health things. So, I would finish the interview, and when I would get done, I would say, I want to go back and I want to educate you on 2 things. One is people don't commit suicide, and I can explain that further in a minute if you want. But the second thing I want to educate you on is I asked you what mental health was, and you described mental illness.
Yeah.
Mental health, like you just said, is a good thing.
Yeah.
If someone shows up to work and they're not limping, and they're strong and robust and can do their work, and they run marathons, or they're a gymnast, whatever that may be, they're physically healthy. But if they show up with their leg in a cast, they got a physical injury, right?
Correct.
And you hear a lot of times people. I was in a peer group meeting where one of the contractors wanted to talk about losing 2 employees to suicide, and a gentleman leaned over in my ear and said, "Hey, all the people that die by suicide have chemical imbalances." Well, for starters, we don't have chemicals in our brains. So there's a misnomenclature, right? Our brain works off of electrical impulses. It doesn't have anything to do with chemical imbalances. So there's just all this stigma that goes with mental illness. I never saw a therapist for any type of counseling until late 22, early
Oh,
23.
really?
And the only reason I did is because one of the professors in the program where I was doing my research said, "This is going to be a very heavy topic for you, and I will help you, but I would appreciate it if you would consider seeing someone." So I never had. And so you go see them for the first time, and it's like you're going on a date for the first time. You kind of
Get
know
to
each
know
other,
each
know
other.
each
Yeah.
other out. And you go back the second time, hey, you get a little more questions. So they're trying to get to know you a little more. And I went back the third time, and I think it's important for your people to hear this. And I go back the third time, and she said, "Okay, you suffer from anxiety, depression, ADD, and you're controlling."
Great.
Wow, what do I do with that? I went home and I told my wife, I said, "I thought you were the crazy one in the family, and I found out everything in the world wrong with me."
Oh, goodness.
And I thought, God, no, I'm not going to go back again.
Yeah.
I can't deal. That's heavy. I can't deal with that. So I waited like a month and I went back and I told her, I said, "I want you to know that what you told me hurt. It cut like a knife because I never felt I had anything." I said, "Hey, the controlling part, maybe I'll buy in on that because I didn't get to where I'm at in my career without being somewhat controlling and
True.
somewhat of a type A personality." So I said, "Hey, we'll check the box on that one. I will give you that one." And she said, "Those are labels. Those are talking points." She said, I didn't say that you were severely depressed. I didn't say that you had great anxiety." She said, "But you do suffer from some of those." And going through that, now it's been 9, 10, 11 months later, reflection that you alluded to earlier.
Yep.
I have gone through some times in my life where I have been pretty depressed. And in my mind, I would just, hey, it's normal and you're going through it. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but depression has, somewhere in the definition, it's kind of like this. If you're in a low state of mood and that carries for more than 2 weeks at a time, well, you're going through depression.
Correct.
Well, I had periods where I was probably going through that for months at a time.
Well,
So, okay, we'll check that box too. I've been through depression. And you know what? I think probably almost everybody in society has gone through some depression, and if you haven't, hey, you've had a great life. If you've lost a father that bothered you for a while, if you've lost a classmate, if you've lost a child, you have probably gone through some degree of depression, because it's kind of like you can sprain your wrist, you can crack a bone in your wrist, you can break your wrist, you can have a compound fracture. It's all about your wrist, but it's on a different scale,
that's
right?
right.
So I mean, you can have a level of depression that's a 2, or you can have a level of depression that's a 10. And I still don't think that everybody that's going through something necessarily has to go see a therapist. Although it doesn't hurt, I'm not discouraging anyone not to, because it helped me. Maybe you just need to talk to your spouse, which I didn't do. Maybe you just need to talk to a good friend. Maybe you're religious and you've got a pastor or a rabbi or a minister that you can talk to. But the one thing that isn't absolute, you need to talk to someone.
Yeah. 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 I think, when you hear about anybody who shares with you about the relief that they've had, it's never been, I didn't go anywhere or speak to anybody, right? It was always like, well, I shared with them, and then there was a relief off of me, which led to this, which led to this, which led to this, which hopefully leads to their recovery, right? I mean, that's the same thing we were talking about physical health. You sprain your ankle, you go into recovery mode to try to get that thing back up strong. The same way with your mind as well, as it comes to it. Um, you know, if you could give us, a simple, it's not simple, which is an awful way to try to make that ask, but advice, right? You have these guys, you just said, speak to somebody over there. But what if you're the person who is witnessing somebody else, right? What is the best way for us to do this? Because I own a small company. We don't have the mental health team or the Wisco Warriors or whatever it would be on our end. But what are some simple things we can do? Is there a subtle way to do it without making somebody uncomfortable or anything like that when you do notice those types of things, Vince?
Just be a good person.
That's fine. That's fair.
You know, if a lot of my mission, a lot of my talk that began a year ago was around suicide, and now it's evolved a little more into mental health because you need to address that probably before you get to the suicide piece. They kind of go together, right? And I tell people that there used to be this idea that if you thought someone was struggling, you should never ask them, "Hey, you're not thinking about taking your life," because if they weren't, and you ask that, then suddenly you might give them the idea to do that.
Yeah.
One, that's been proven to be false. If you think someone's struggling, you need to ask them. That doesn't mean you walk up to them and say, "Hey, you're not thinking about taking your life, are you?" It begins, and if you're around them daily, it began that first day when I said, "Hey, you have to give me a hug every day before you go home. You don't do that anymore. What's going on?" So now that's been going on for days or weeks, whatever you've seen. And you can ask them, "Hey, you're not thinking about like maybe taking your life, are you?"
Mm-hmm.
And if they say no, then it's a different conversation. If they say yes, then the conversation is, well, we've got some resources. We could call 988 together and talk to them. And the new 988 number is not just for the individual that's struggling. If I think that you may be suicidal, I can call 988 and say, "Hey, I've got this friend and I need to talk to him. Where do I begin? What do I say?
Oh, really?
And they will give me some guidance and coaching to help me go have that conversation. And once I have that conversation and you say you are, now I need to follow up and say, "Well, have you thought about how you would do it?"
Yeah.
Because then that'll let you know the degree of thought that they have put into it. And if they tell you, "Oh, well, I thought about it, I would do it this way," then you need to ask them, "Well, do you have the means to do it? Do you have the means to do it that way?" And if they do, then you need to try to take the means away from them. I had one of my best friends, here a couple months ago on a Friday said, "Work sucks, life sucks. I don't know if I want to go on." And I said, "Hey, you're not talking about what I think you're talking about, are you? Because we've had those conversations before." And I said, "And if you are, can I come and get your guns? Can I bring your guns to my house for a while?" And those conversations aren't fun. They're not easy.
Right.
But I could live with that conversation and not live with finding out on Monday he took his life and having to live the rest of my life and say, he was my best friend.
True.
Why in the world didn't I ask him that?
Yeah.
And the last thing, I don't know when you're going to be done, but there's one thing I want to make sure that we get out before we finish. People don't commit suicide. People die by suicide. People take their lives. Commit has a very negative meaning that goes with it. If I want to say, "I'm sorry your son committed suicide, I'm sorry your father committed suicide," those people are already struggling enough without you telling them that their son or father was a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
Because people commit robberies, people commit homicide, people commit burglary, they commit crimes and sins of all types. People don't commit to having a mental health struggle or an issue that they're going through their life any more than people commit to having a heart attack.
Yes.
Your father didn't commit to have a heart attack and die any more than your father committed to have a mental health struggle and take his life. So it's hurtful, and beyond that, it continued to put this stigma around mental health and suicide that nobody wants to address because it's a very negative topic. So just try to remember to say, I'm sorry they took their life by suicide, or I'm sorry they died by suicide. There's nothing wrong with saying suicide because that's what happened, that's what they did. It's the committed word that is very hurtful to helping resolve this in the future and to the individual for their loss.
Vince, thanks a lot, man, for sharing with us today. It's been fantastic to kind of have you share your story with us for sure, and to bring this to us from your perspective and your angle. And it's great to hear what you all are doing right on that side of it too, as well, and what you've committed to there at Ajax to counter this issue. I really highly recommend and enjoy following Vince on LinkedIn, especially on his profile. There's a lot there. He did Dirt Talk with our friend Aaron Witt, and multiple other podcasts, as well as some great posts that are on there too as well. Recently, I know there is something to sign, correct? Right? A proclamation somewhat. Our friend Jamie over at Dynapack did that recently, and it was very cool. Do you really quick want to touch on that, and then tell us if you're going to be speaking anywhere or where else we can find you online?
February 7th of 23 at the Florida Transportation Builders Construction Conference, I put a proclamation together that I wanted industry leader to sign, because again, I don't think we can address this until the industry leaders say we can address it. And, Jamie Roush from Dynapack signed it. Ward and I, Martin Marietta, CEO, signed it. Dave Bauer from ARTBA came and signed it. Jared Perdue, the Florida Department of Transportation. We had some international contractors, national and state contractors. 31 people signed it. And it basically saying that, hey, we will address the topic. We'll have conversations about it. I'm trying to get 700,000 signature. People ask me, how many do you have? And I say, I don't know. I don't want to ask because I don't want to be disappointed or overly.
Sure.
If people want to sign it, they can go to www.artba.com. That's the American Road and Transportation Builders home site. Go to their front page, just scroll down a little bit, and you'll see it right there. Family member can sign it, kids can sign it, anyone can sign it, because we're all in this together.
Very cool.
Speaking, I'm speaking at a lot of asphalt association meetings all over the place. I'm going to NUCA here in Florida, I think in November. I'm actually going up to Jamie's place at Dynapack next week and going to talk to some of their people. Again,
LinkedIn's a spot, I think.
Put it on LinkedIn, and I put in there sometimes where I'm going to talk, but nobody wants to hear me.
I don't know about that.
There's I've got a web page, www.vincehafeli, VINCEHAFELI.com, and there's a place on there where you can send me emails, and I send people resources that I put together that their companies use, or if they have questions. Again, I'm not a mental health expert by any means. I'm just trying to guide people in the right direction, and I'm trying to encourage the peers and CEOs, presidents, owners like you to address this topic. I'm not going to come in and fix your people, but I can point you in the direction and give you some tools to people that can.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important aspects about what you do too, Vince, is just giving some guidance and direction, because you get to a point because you don't necessarily have so much guidance or direction, right? So it's definitely something that we know, especially by the numbers and whatnot that you shared with us, and that we probably witnessed personally in our lives, that isn't going to go away if we don't do something about it, right? And it probably is never going to go away, but we can definitely minimize the hurt and help people get back to enjoying what they do, their lives, their friends, and people around them. So once again, I do really want to thank Vince for joining us today. Be sure to follow him on LinkedIn and to go to any of the websites that he previously mentioned here. For myself, here, Marvin, here, Vince in sunny Florida, which I'm going to be jealous of very soon. I'm going to have to make a trip down there, I think, sometime soon. This is Blacktop Banter, where we speak asphalt. Peace.
Hey there, Blacktop Banner fans. This is Hayden. I am the co-founder of Spot On Site. We're asphalt contractors ourselves. We run an asphalt paving company based out of Denver, Colorado. We know this is a game-changing app that will help you measure, mark your locations in your parking lots, document using time-stamped photos, videos, and comments, and send professional-looking reports to your customers. We have a free 14-day trial on spotonsiteapp.com.
Hey, Jessica Lombardo with Pavex, the Pavement Experience, and I want to invite you all to join us in San Antonio for the first ever event. It will be held January 30th through February 1st at the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center. We are going to have a live equipment demonstration over 2 days, 60 hours of educational programming, and a full trade show floor with over 75 manufacturers of equipment in the paving and pavement maintenance space. So please join us there, and to learn more and get yourself registered, visit www.pavexshow.com.
When it comes to asphalt tools and supplies, Liberty Supply has darn near everything you need. I actually think the owner, Sam, sleeps on a mountain of spray tips in their warehouse alongside the pour pots, hot pots, steel brooms, chalk lines, flagging tape, and hundreds of other items. If you call Sam today at 800-397-9907 or visit libertysupply.biz, they'll get you set up with everything you need. For custom and multi-piece stencils, I always turn to Stencil Plus. They've supplied every stencil we use, and these things last a long time. Actually, I should probably call Jeff over at Stencil Plus and just say hi, because it's been a long time since I've had to place an order. Anyway, if you want long-lasting, high-quality stencils, head over to stencilplus.com and save 10% by using code BB10 during checkout.